Hey y'all, what is going on? It's Jesse Both from the 19th hole, and we did the rookie refresh yesterday. I'm not gonna have time to get together the pro expert videos from the second tee for the pro or expert version of that, but I am gonna do an illustrated version of the pro expert guide. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the holes 1 through 9. We're gonna talk about the routes, ball usage, club usage, and just some of my personal tips, from these courses. These are old courses, so these are all courses that I played in the tournaments before, and hopefully I can share a little bit of information here in this video that can kind of help put you on the right path to at least having the knowledge in your mind, if nothing else, so that you will be prepared for Monday when qualification begins in the Community Cup. So we're going to go ahead and start in just a moment. All right, so we are going to start here with hole number 1. And hole number 1 is definitely a hole that we can get the ace on, I think. So hole 1, par 3. The elevation that we'll be playing on this shot is plus 30%, and that elevation will not change from the different shots that we can play on this hole. So you got two options here from the second tee. You can play a shot where you bounce it on the fairway, and that would be with a wood, or you can play the rough bump, and that would be with a wood as well. So you have the fairway option and the rough bump option. Obviously, the rough bump option has been the most popular way to play this hole, mainly because it offers such a great percentage of chance to get that hole-in-one. For sure. Now, there is historically been a little bit of a funnel there on this hole. I looked at the video, playthrough, like the video flyover, and it looks like they didn't make any changes to the green, but it's just really difficult to tell until we really get in there and play it some. So, Tour 8 would be where you would go to try to play this hole, and if you can play it there, you can kind of see and make a judgment whether or not they've made any kind of changes to the green, which they probably have not, I would not guess. But if you're playing the rough bump, you have to choose what ball you're going to use. You want at least a side spin 2, side spin 3 ball, especially if you have a right to left wind. You need that side spin 3 for that extra side spin. But then for the top spin or the back spin, it's definitely going to depend on what type of wind we have. If we have a tailwind, then apparently of course we're not going to be using topspin, and you want to use a little bit of backspin to no backspin, just depending on the angle. But if you have a headwind, that's when you got to use a little bit of topspin on the shot to get it to come out of that rough properly. So we'll have to wait and see on Monday what spin we have. And ball choices, Kingmaker ball is good, but if you have a wind ball, that would be even better, because when you use a wind ball, like a wind 4 or a wind 5 ball, it's going to cut down the amount of rings that you have to adjust on your shot. And, when you have to adjust either 6 rings or 8 to 10 rings, it's a huge difference, because the more rings you have to adjust, the more chance that you have to adjust incorrectly. So if you adjust at the incorrect angle, for 5 or 6 rings, then it may not be as bad as if you adjust at the incorrect angle for 8 to 10 rings, especially if you have like a right to left headwind where we're having to adjust back over the fairway. And in that case, the wrong adjustment could spell death, because if you hit that fairway, in here, you're bouncing into the bunker or into the rough, and that's just no good on this hole. So if you want to play the shot off the fairway, then you'll be playing the wood, sniper, higher level sniper with backspin, or even the guardian, would work on that hole, and you're using somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 bars of backspin for that shot to control that shot to stop it close enough to the hole. But it's definitely not a way to play the hole going for the ace. It's the safe way just to play the birdie, and I think this is going to be a tournament that's going to be there's going to be some good scoring in it. So I think this is definitely a hole that would be awesome to be able to start out with the ace and get you really started in the right direction. So that was hole 1. All right, hole number 2 is next. One of my personal favorites. Just think it's a fun hole. and I did get the ace on it a couple tournaments ago, so that for me makes it even more of a fun par 4 when you know you have a chance to get the ace. So for the drive, we'll play 0%. For the elevation, you have a few options. You can play with the big topper, or an extra mile, a Thor, an APOC, from the second tee. You want to have at least probably 6 bars of topspin, at least 6 bars. And you'll be landing your shot somewhere in this zone right here, playing it through the trees. Try and hit right here in this rough to where you can just perfectly roll out towards the pin. And that's going to be more of a straight-on approach to this hole with the big topper, or like I said, Thor, APOC, extra mile. Now, if you want to play a different shot, like we get, like maybe a headwind, or a side wind, then trying to play a shot over to this zone right here, which is going to be more of like a power curl shot here, may be a really good choice. This is a shot we've used the last few tournaments. This is a shot I used when I got the hole-in-one. And, I played it with Thor. You could play it probably with an extra mile or an APOC, because, you're probably not using full curl on the shot. So, it's not one of those shots that's exclusive to just one type of club that has really good curl. This is a shot that could be played by several other clubs. Now, what's going to depend, the change is going to be what kind of wind angle we have. Last few times we've had like a right to left headwind. So the shot actually got blown back towards the spot. And you were able to play that with 3 to 4 backspin, max left spin. And the shot kind of rolls over. You want it to hit the fairway, and then you're using that backspin to either, take the ball up the fairway and then back to the hole, or you could end up maybe in the fairway just above the green for a short little wedge chip down to the hole. And possibly you could end up in the hole. But it definitely was a fun way to play this hole. And depending on what wind we have, that will definitely depend on the adjustment for the rings, as far as how many rings to move to the right for the power curl shot, or just how to play a regular curl shot when just trying to hit perfect in the shot zone. That's the more aggressive ways to play this hole. You can also play this hole, safely to the left or to the right, 0%. And you'll be playing the shot up the left-hand side, trying to get up here past these trees, or you can play the shot to the right-hand side, which would be the same way. You want to get far enough up the fairway where you're past these trees, and then you have clear shots towards the hole. That shot right there will be plus 30% for that shot towards the hole that way, which I do not encourage that way of playing the hole, but it's definitely a way to play the hole if you don't feel comfortable with going through the trees. I mean, I'll be quite honest, if you screw up the shot through the trees and you have a chip from down here in the rough for the bunker here, I feel like you have a better chance to make that shot to the green than you have from making a shot from up here to the green. And that's just my opinion, but I feel like, you do have a better chance of chipping it in from the rough than from that severe downhill 30% elevation change shot, So anyways, that's hole 2. And let's move on to hole number 3. Hole 3 is a par 5. And we've had this one, fairly recently. These Eagle holes were in the fall major. So if you want to watch some content and footage from the tournament on these holes being played, the fall major would be where to go to see it. So pending the wind, we're either going to be able to bounce the shot before the rough or after the rough. Our end goal is to try to get up in this fairway. Now, whether or not you can fly the rough or you have to bounce it before the rough is going to depend on how far in this zone you can get. The farther up you can get, the closer to a long iron shot you can play. If you have to bounce before the rough, then you're going to end up more back towards the tee, and then you're going to be looking at more of a wood shot. So for the drive, I'd play anywhere from plus 5 to 10% on the drive. I just feel like that shot has a tendency to carry. So I think, playing a little bit of an added percentage, especially in a tailwind, is kind of like a safety, like a buffer. just to make sure you don't overfly into the rough. Unless you're going to fly over the rough, then it doesn't really matter at that point. But for the second shot, it's plus 10%. So plus 10% for the second shot. And as I said, if you're playing the shot with the wood, then you're going to be playing either the Guardian shot from the front edge of this fairway close to the fringe, and you'll be playing a full backspin shot trying to get it to come back to the hole. You could also play a sniper shot where you land it here on the same area, but then you use kind of the contour of the green and that slope behind the green to bring it back to the hole off the slope. And those are those two ways that you can play that shot with the wood club. If you're playing with the long iron, then you're going to be playing with a long iron with a lot of backspin. So I would definitely suggest thinking about going with your Saturn would definitely be an option. And you'd be playing it kind of the same way you would play that Guardian shot, where you bounce it off the front of that fairway slash green and then back to the hole that way. And those would be your plays on this hole. You get that fairway off to the left-hand side, and maybe, with the perfect like right to left tailwind, you could, maybe if we had like a tailwind like this, you could play some sort of a power curl shot, where you bounce it up this fairway. Now, if you can get far enough up this fairway, in this area right here, that does set you up for a nice looking sniper shot, to the hole. And that is a possibility for sure. So, definitely don't count that out. If we have a wind, that sets us up for that. And that would be cool if Playdemic gave us something to change up the way we play this hole. But definitely keep that in mind. And I would play that shot at plus 10% from the left-hand side if we had the right wind to play it that way, of course. But it's a pretty wide-open shot with the sniper using that ball guide. And it will give you a decent chance at rolling it in for the albatross. So just keep that in mind. All right, moving on. Hole number 4, par 3. And this hole right here is definitely a rough bump hole. Played at plus 10%. This is definitely a rough bump hole. And you'll use anywhere from, probably max left spin to 2 bars of backspin. Side spin 3 ball, definitely a must here on this hole. And if you can use like the Kingmaker's a good ball, and then if you have the Centurion ball, you really want to have that power 3 ball. It makes this a lot easier. So if you have one of those, the Centurion would be a great ball to use here, or anything with a side spin 3. You just have to at least have a side spin 3. So if you had a wind 4 and something else with a side spin 3, that should work. But that would be the way to play this hole. Is the best chance at the ace, I would say, would be the rough bump, and you're looking at quarterback or the rock for that shot, plus 10%. You could also play, maybe like a sniper shot right here if we have a tailwind where you bounce it over. You want to land just past the edge of the rough line, and then possibly roll that one to the hole as well. That's another method that you could play on this hole as well. And if we get really gnarly headwind, you can play a driver with backspin. So like maybe, I don't know what's wrong with this thing. You can play a driver with backspin and right spin to try to bring it in this way. And take it towards the hole as well. I think that would be kind of like your last resort. I think the rough bump or the sniper shot, if there, are going to be your 2 best options for this hole. And it seems to be that hole that, I don't know, for me at least, it always seems to be that hole where I can't hit perfect on. I know everybody here has one. You have one hole every tournament, at least one shot, if not more, where it doesn't matter how well you have it lined up, it just always seems like you hit the great ball. This was that hole for me last time, and it's just, it gets so frustrating when if you hit it perfect, you have a good chance. But I think this is a tough hole, and I think that the rough bump on this hole will make it where a lot of people come really close, but not a lot of people hit the ace. So we'll see if that continues to be the case on this hole come Monday and throughout the week. All right, hole number 5 is next. And this one is a par 4. This is a tough par 4. Very hard par 4. So off the tee box, we'll play plus 10% off the tee box. And if you have a headwind like we had last time, you just have to play your shot up into this fairway. Or you can possibly overpower a shot with like a power 4, wind 4 ball over the fringe there, the rough and the bushes there, up to that zone. Now from the left-hand side, I play plus 10% towards the hole. From the right-hand side, it really depends on where you're at and where you're landing the shot. If you're going to play the shot just to the fringe and the fairway area right here, then I would just play probably somewhere around 0% on that shot. It's a pretty flat shot. Now, if we have a tailwind, of course you can play the shot to the left. Is always going to be there. But if you have a nice tailwind, you can try to play your drive to land it over here, bounce up this fairway, past the rough, past the bushes, and try to get it as far up into that fairway as possible. If you land farther back, maybe in this zone, then you're looking at a short iron chip up here to the fairway in front of the green. If you get far enough up in this fairway, though, then you have a wedge shot to that same spot. Now, the farther back you are in this fairway, the farther down that hill you go. So the farther uphill of a shot you will be taking to the green. If you get up here to the top area, like in wedge range, then you're going to be on a much leveler surface as far as where you're chipping to. So I would say farther back in the fairway is -10, farther up in the fairway about -5 to 0. So that's definitely going to be some things to keep in mind when we do play this hole, if we have the opportunity to make that drive. And as far as the ball usage on this hole, it's just going to depend on the wind and what you really want to do with the shot. You're going to use a lot of topspin. You don't want to use too much left spin, though, because you don't want to end up in these bunkers or that rough or even too far up the fairway and into those bunkers or rough. So you're going to have to manage your topspin and your left spin pending the strength of the wind that we get, if we get it. If we don't get it, we're going to play the hole boring, just like we played at last tournament, where people are trying different types of shots and crazy stuff. And actually, this is an old image. This is an old image because I think this right here is now, like, all of this is like rough. So this is definitely an old image where you can, some people were trying the rough bump even there. So I didn't even notice that this had not been corrected yet. So anyways, interesting hole, and just have to see what we get wind-wise. All right, next hole is hole 6, par 4. This is another hole that we have not had in quite a long time. This is a pretty straightforward hole. The shot is going to come up to this fairway. You want to drive it up this fairway. You don't want to go too far up the fairway because you do want to have a second shot with your sniper to the green. Now, if you have a strong tailwind and you do get too far or not far enough up, then you will have more or less probably a Goliath, possibly a B-52, or use a Grizzly for the shot. But if you have side wind or headwind, we will be playing with the sniper, and it will be a rough bump. Now for the drive, I've always played the drive at plus 10%, and then for the second shot, you play the second shot at minus 10%. So plus 10% on the drive, minus 10% on the second shot is what I have always played the shot at. Now, if you play minus 10% and you still feel like you're kind of missing a little bit, maybe you feel like you're still missing over adjusted, then you can go to minus 20%, and that may work, and maybe minus 15% will work for you. So it's be flexible on that second shot, anywhere from minus 10 to minus 20% for that second shot. Okay. So, all right. Next hole. Hole number 7. Another hole that we have not had very often. Now you have two options here. You can either play the long iron shot where you bounce it off here, or you could try to hit the rough bump right here. And this may be one of those holes where we see what kind of wind we have. And if we have a really nice side wind, that rough bump may be a good option. If you have a tailwind, then playing the shot back here off the fairway may be a good option. It's just going to be interesting to see because it's a hole that we have not had a lot of times in the tournament. So there, people have not had a lot of chances to really dial in this shot. Playing the shot off the fairway is going to be probably the Goliath, and then the sniper for the rough bump would be my guess. So, probably the sniper rough bump will be possible in side winds and headwinds. I would guess a tailwind would take that rough bump out of play, at least with the sniper, for sure, because of the issue of going in between clubs. But plus 20% will be the elevation here on this shot. And if you're playing the shot from the fairway section, you either could be using, like I said, you'll be using the Goliath most likely, and you're not going to use a whole lot of topspin, especially, if you have a tailwind. Now, if you have a headwind, then you'll be using some topspin. If you have a side wind, then you'll be using a little bit more topspin. And as far as the side spin goes, definitely, depending on your landing zone, what area of that slope you land your shot on, that will determine your side spin as well. So it's definitely going to be a hole that we have to feel out as we play it. And like I said, it's not been a hole we've had a ton of times in the tournament. And if you want to practice it, it's on Tour 3. So if you want to dive back into Tour 3 and open that back up, then that would be a place to play it. If you want to look and see what it looks like, I do have it as an example on my rookie refresh video that you can check out, and at least you can see what it looks like being played from the first tee at least. All right, next hole is hole number 8. Hole number 8. Now, if they give us a tailwind here, it's going to be greeny all day long, maybe a hole-in-one. If they give us some sort of a side wind, we're still going to be able to get very close up to the green. Okay? So, if we have a side or tailwind, we're landing our shot in here, and we're going with overpower as best as we can, where we can accurately hit our shot up to this fairway and either get on the green or around the fringe of the green. This is going to be probably, barring some sort of crazy headwind, this is going to be a hole. It's going to be a must eagle come tournament time. We'll play plus 10% for the elevation on the drive here. And like I said, it depends on how expensive you want to get ball-wise. This could be a hole where you can maybe full blast a Titan onto the green, or it may be a hole where you could take a Berserker and hit a half overpower shot onto the green. So it's going to be interesting. I look forward to seeing what kind of wind they give us. Are they just going to give it to us and lay it in our laps, or are they going to give us some kind of like a slight, side headwind and make us kind of work for it a little bit more? The problem I see with that is if they do that, I think they open this up to those players with just higher level clubs. And if they're going to do something like that, I say just give us a tailwind, and let everybody have a chance to hit the perfect and get the ball up there. Anyways. Okay. Hole number 9 is next, our last and final hole, and we have a hole here, once again, with the correct wind. There's a chance to get a hole-in-one on a par 5, which I believe would be a condor. I believe a condor is the correct terminology for a hole-in-one on a par 5. The way we're playing this one is plus 10% off the tee box, and with a nice tailwind, you better believe we're going off this island, over the rough, and bouncing towards the green. Now, if you get on the green, awesome job. If you don't get on the green, maybe you end up short of the green, or really close to the fringe. For a short iron, we'll play plus 10%. And then if you're in wedge range, you're going to play whatever wedge percentage you play in, if depending on how you play your wedge shot. Most of the time, though, with a wedge, you just play at plus 20% and then play your club distance to the hole. And that's the best way to play a shot like that, especially if you have topspin. This is a fairly smooth green, so this would be a good chance to max out your topspin and then roll it to the hole that way. But for a thorn or hornet shot, I'd play plus 10%. I would straighten out my ball guide with 2 to 3 bars of backspin, land that about 1.5 squares or so short of the hole, and try to hit perfect after your adjustment and drop it for the albatross. Now, that's in a perfect world. A perfect world, we get the tailwind. In a not so perfect world, we get something crappy. And possibly we may have to go to the left-hand side. So if we go to the left-hand side, our goal is to get the ball as far down the fairway as possible. Okay? Because the farther you get down that fairway, if you can get past that line, then you have more of a shot to this fairway here, and you have a better chance to roll a shot out to the hole. Plus 10% for that second shot from the left-hand side is going to be the way to play. Now, if for some reason you decide you want to stick your drive up here on this this island, this raised island, we'll play that shot at a plus 40% for a downhill shot towards the green. Okay, so if you want to play the shot to the island, then we'll play a plus 40% downhill shot towards the green. And this is another hole where, if you have a tailwind, amping up that tailwind with the berserker ball may be the best way to get that ball to the green. But if you have a tailwind, you don't necessarily have to use the berserker to give yourself a good chance at the albatross. So we'll see what wind they give us on Monday. I would assume that they're going to keep the people happy. The people chose these holes for a reason. They chose them for the reason that you can drive the green possibly with it. So I don't foresee them giving us a wind that takes that away from the people who chose these holes. So we'll wait and see Monday morning when qualification opens what they give us, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much for joining me for this pro and expert illustrated kind of guide playthrough of the holes. Hopefully, some of this helped refresh your memory. Maybe you learned a thing or two that you didn't know about these holes, especially maybe these older holes that we have not seen much. And if anything, it gives you some ideas on how to play these holes as far as kind of like a basic roadmap. And you'll be a little bit more prepared on Monday. So thank you all very much. Have a great day, and God bless.